So as you guys already know, I'm going back to school, and I'm actually already in school right now as you're watching this video, but there are a few things that I'm going to do to the 350Z to make sure it is 100% ready to go when we start it up 2 years from now when I'm done with school. First things first, we're going to be using some fuel stabilizer, and we're also going to go one step further and use ethanol-free gas. The ethanol content in modern gas is the only reason that gas breaks down. Fuel from the 1960s, that's 100% pure gasoline. You could find a can of it now and pour it in a car as long as it doesn't have lead in it, and it'll fire right up and work perfectly fine. Modern gas sucks. So the fuel stabilizer will help, but the ethanol-free gas will also be a huge help. There are really only two ways that you should store a car for an extended period of time, either with a full tank of gas with the stabilizer like we're doing, or completely bone dry empty. If it's bone dry empty, you won't have any issues with your fuel going bad. You can leave it as stored as long as you want. The problem is you can get water vapor in your lines and in the tank, and that'll sit in there and cause some rust issues depending on what all of the materials are used in your fuel system. Now, if you are storing it with a completely full tank, there's no room for any water vapor to get in there. It's all blocked off by the gasoline. And as long as you've got a stabilizer in there and using ethanol-free gas, it should be good to go when you go to start it in a couple of years, and you won't have any sort of rust issues in your system. Not to mention, it's extremely difficult to drain a modern fuel system because most of them do not have a drain plug on the tank. You have to drop the tank and dump it all out, and you have to dispose it of fuel. It's a ton of work, and it's not worth it. Next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be addressing the oil. So we're going to put fresh oil in the car, so drain out all that old oil from Road Atlanta, put in new oil, a new filter, and we're going to be putting in some oil stabilizer. So not only should it lengthen the life of the oil and keep it from breaking down with oxidation and just over time, even though it's not going to be used and heated up like a normal engine, it's still going to have to sit there and stick to all the surfaces in the engine to A, protect them, and B, protect them when we go to start it. So we're protecting it from air and oxidation and rust, again, depending on what material that engine part is made out of. But we also still want a layer of oil on moving parts when we go to start it 2 years from now. Unlike an older engine, which you can prime using the distributor gear, you can't do that on a modern engine. You just have to start it and let it run. So hopefully that'll provide some extra protection when we go to start it in a couple of years before the oil pump can get the pressure up. Because the car is going to be sitting for a very long time and I don't want my wife to have to come out and deal with it, I'm going to be putting it on jack stands, so all four corners will be off the ground. The main thing that's going to be protecting is the tires. It of course will take some pressure off of your bushings and your shocks and your struts, but the main thing we're protecting is the tires. We don't want them to get flat spotted. It's not as big a deal on a modern tire. It should work its way back out. But even then, we just don't want to have to worry about it. I don't want to have to come back in and instantly put brand new tires on it. So putting it up on jack stands won't be that big of a deal. The next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding in the side windows. So we have those side windows for when we're driving to and from the track and it's cold outside. We'll just go ahead and put those in just to keep dust and different materials and any sort of like mice or animals that might come into the garage from getting in there. We'll also have a car cover on it. It's not going to be as big a deal because the car is already in a garage, but it doesn't hurt to button everything up and keep it as clean and contained as we possibly can. It also helps that there's that big window right there by the car, so the less attention I can draw to the car, the better. If someone happens to see that and decides they want to break in, it's going to be a lot less obvious if it's just a bland gray car cover. The last thing we're going to do that is extremely helpful is we're going to be putting the car on a battery tender. It has always been on a battery tender ever since this became my secondary car, just to keep that battery alive. Honestly, the battery's on its way out anyway, so it's probably not going to be worth anything when we come to start it 2 years from now. But I already have the battery tender. It's already on it. It takes no time to hook it up. Literally, it's 2 clips on the battery. So we'll leave that on there and just hope that when we go to start the car in 2 years, the battery will still be working. Now, one thing to think about, if you have a car that is in a garage in the north and you run straight water during track season, do not forget to drain out the water in your coolant system so that if it expands, you're not going to ruin your radiator or your engine block. The coldest it's ever going to get here is just barely approaching freezing, and it's going to be at least 15 to 20 degrees warmer than that in the garage, so I'm not worried about it. I'm going to go ahead and drain it anyway because it takes all of 5 minutes to drain out the coolant, and because it's straight water, it only costs a couple of dollars from the grocery store, so I'm not worried about losing the coolant. But that should cover everything. We've got our main fluids covered: coolant, oil, and gasoline. We're gonna keep the car clean and protected, protect our suspension, get the car up off the ground, and when we come back in a couple of years and we are all done with school and we have the disposable income, we can take the car racing and it'll be ready to go. Of course, most of you aren't going to be storing a car for this long. At most, you're going to store it during the winter if you live up north or in Canada, and you'll be storing it from somewhere like October to March. But all the things that I'm doing on the car here are a good idea to do even if you're storing it for 6 months, because modern gasoline can definitely go bad in that time. You'll definitely have an issue with straight water if you're somewhere that it's so cold you're storing your car. It never hurts to start the season with a fresh thing of oil, so if you go ahead and change it now, you're going to save yourself a step in the future. And taking your pressure off your tires, you're going to save yourself from having to come out every couple weeks and roll it back and forth. Now, what a lot of people do is they will come out and they will start their car every couple of weeks or at least once a month while it is stored. I don't want to ask my wife to do that because number one, she does not feel comfortable keeping an eye on all the things she's supposed to keep an eye on. Is the car building proper oil pressure? Is there anything leaking? Does anything smell weird or sound weird? She's just not into cars, and I don't want to ask her to do that because if she starts it and something breaks, I don't want that to be her fault. And number two, it's going to be stored for 2 years, so I don't want to do a bunch of cold starts on the car when it's never going to get a chance to come up to temperature and get to be driven around and used. So I'm just going to leave it, let it sit, and we'll do that one dry start 2 years from now. But if you're storing your car for a shorter amount of time, or it's going to be, and you think you might have a day where you can start it up and actually drive it around. So of course, if you guys have any questions or comments, or you are from a part of the world where you have to store your car for months at a time and you think I have forgotten something that you want to add, please feel free to drop those in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next week.